So the Andaras are like, speaking of sentient like beings, they communicate light codes. They definitely help me
Mm.
talk to stars directly. They're almost like portals or portholes. If you're looking through like a
Wow.
peephole in a
Yeah.
doorway, right? Like sometimes beings' faces like come right up into them and look through. So in this silver piece that I have, this very clear profile. A lot of times, those of us that work with Andaras take pictures of them or hold them up to the light or work with them with the sun. And you can see in a photograph what, it captures it in a different way than what you see in person. And I took a
Oh.
picture of this silver Andara and had this very prominent profile of a Sasquatch.
Welcome to Conversation for the Soul. I'm Linda Christine. So today I talk with Julie Dhara Roberts, and oh my gosh, this woman is an amazing wealth of knowledge when it comes to the stars and how to communicate with the stars and what the different constellations mean and perhaps how they'll affect us, not in the sense of astrology, but just in the sense of, okay, an eclipse is coming or this is happening, bringing it into your awareness field. And somehow this whole thing dovetails into Sasquatch. That's going to be very interesting. You're going to want to hear that. And then we also talk about Andara crystals and how those tie in and the galactic connection between these crystals and our star family. So it was an amazing conversation, a little bit ADD. That's my fault because, my gosh, so many interesting subjects. But I do hope you enjoyed this conversation with Julie. Welcome. We're here today with Julia. Hi. Oh, Julie. Sorry. I don't know why I use Julia sticks in my brain for you for some reason.
Okay,
Maybe it's
yeah.
the Julia Roberts Mystic Pizza, kind of that region of the country thing. I don't know.
It happens all the time. That's okay.
Welcome. Welcome. You are what I would consider an expert on the stars.
Oh,
And
that's
I would love to talk stars with you because I just love the stars. And it feels like to me there's more connection coming in to humanity from the stars. Like my husband thinks I'm crazy, but a few times, more than a few times, at least a dozen times, I've gone out and I will ask a question and see a shooting star immediately after. Or I will be looking up at one of the two constellations that seem to be communicating with me, and you can tell me if this what this means in your world. Orion has communicated with me by just flashing at me. And the big one is Cassiopeia.
mhm.
Lots of activity coming from there for me recently, a lot. And I know absolutely nothing about it. I like had to Google it the other day and go, okay, are there beings that live there? What's the deal with that? So have you had any experience like that as of late? And do you feel like it's increasing? And what might be going on?
So when you say experience, hi everybody, thanks for having me. When you say experiences like that, you mean like what you feel like is like direct communication from the stars in like
Yeah.
flashing patterns
Like
moving
I'll
in the
be
sky?
out
Yeah.
on an early morning walk because I like to just get out early and look at the stars. I moved out to the country and now they're super bright out here and I just love it. And I will see out of the top of my eye a blink and
Yeah.
I'll go, I just imagined it and keep looking and it'll blink again. And then it'll blink again. And it's not, I know aircraft, I know satellites, I've seen all that. Something that just blinks randomly like that is like, okay, something's communicating with me.
Yeah, like it's almost like a flirtation or getting your attention. It's like a
Yes.
sparkly, yes, for sure. That happens for me a bunch. The first time it happened, um, so I knew what the Pleiades were like, and I could always, that star cluster always gathers my attention. And the Pleiades are cool because you can almost see them better if you don't look at them directly. They're kind of like one of those, they like glitter a bunch.
And
But
where
anyway,
are
but
they?
in the same, in down sky of the Pleiades is another constellation or another star cluster in the same constellation called the Hyades. And the
Hmm.
Hyades form like a V. The star Aldebaran is in there. And they like it's like this star show was put on for me, like that V cluster of them, almost like they were moving, like they were like it was a Star Wars movie, like they were rearranging themselves like
Wow.
constellation, and they were you know that you have those, is that, am I like really seeing that, is that really happening, or you know like that, and things
Yeah.
yeah, they make these like blinky, it's like the star, like star codes or like star family or star communications,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it gets your attention in that like flirtatious kind of like I'm winking at you from across the sky way, but it's different than like it has that quality of like, for me it has that like sweaty palm, like art, you know, your heart's a
Yeah.
flutter, like it has that quality to it.
Oh, it's so exciting
Yeah.
because it's like, ooh, somebody's communicating with me. So, do you feel that it's because you have lineage there or family there, star family there?
Well, I feel like all of us, you know, it's if you were to just come at it from like a pure scientific quality, like the carbon and the molecules that make up our cells of our body, like every all of life here on Earth really was born in stars. So on some level,
Mhm.
it's like this deep DNA, deep cellular memory or connection.
Yeah.
So there's that level of like, you know, we are stardust, and like, you know, the
Hmm.
carbon and the nitrogen, the oxygen, like all the building blocks of life here on Earth were born in a different distant star nursery or a nebula, and you know, blossomed through space to this star that we live in, this solar system, in this little part of the galaxy. So like, I don't have that personal feeling of like, oh, I'm from this particular star system, you know, like a one, it's like all of them and more.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then, so on that level, it's like that deep remembrance or that like communication hit, right? And then in a different way, like just from being here, like earthlings residing on the surface of Earth, looking up at the stars, it's like, who's to say like each one of those pinpoints or each constellation isn't like a sentient communicative being too,
Hmm.
you know, like you know much of Steiner's work, or like the different like the, you know, solar logos, like, you know, it's like the sun, like is our planet a living breathing sentient being? Is
Yeah.
the sun, you know, like is a living
Yeah. Yeah.
sentient being that communicates?
Well, that makes
So why
sense.
wouldn't every star point of light be like that too? So it's really like us raising our vibration or changing like our logos or our vantage point from what we see. It's like it communicates, and there are subtle chakras. You know, we know like the seventh chakra is the crown chakra, right? And there's a soul star chakra,
Hmm.
like about a foot above the head, that communicates like sun to sun, right? That's like our soul star.
Mm.
But then as you go up and there's more subtle, I feel like then there's like, you know, the star, um, you know, there's galactic communication and stellar communication pathways too in our upper registers.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. So, how
But
did
to go
you
back to
get?
like the nighttime sky or like going for a walk in the morning, the
Yeah.
whole Orion, you asked it, like Orion really speaks to me too. I think for all of us on, you know, it's like such a recognizable and such
Hmm.
a striking, especially here, you know, we're in the same time zone, even though our
Yeah.
latitudes are different. But this time of year is when we see Orion. It's that like late October, November, December, because it's,
Yeah.
you know, most of us, well, you're talking about going at 4 or 5 a.m., but a lot of people see the stars driving home in the evening or going out for walks or walking the dog in the evening.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Wow. So, how did you get into this? Was there something in your childhood that just like hooked you?
totally in. I I would say that even when I was like little, I think I've been talking to stars like my whole life and just didn't quite realize that's what was happening. When I was little, I had tons of imaginary friends that were just these like columns of light. Like light, now is like whatever age we're at. And decades later,
Yeah.
they're like, oh, the light beings, or people would talk about talking to angels or talking to interdimensional beings. Um, and just for me, the stars and space and just anything like that would like always quicken my pulse. So when you
Mm.
asked me from like when I was in kindergarten all the way through college, I was like, I was going to be an astronaut. It was just like space. So I pursued that all the way through. I got a degree in aeronautical engineering, which has nothing to do with astronomy or the stars, really. It has more to do with, I just figured like, oh, if I knew how to design spaceships, they'd let me go up in them. And then I could get to space. It was just like, I gotta get to space. I've got to get to
Yes, I
space.
gotta get home.
Yeah. It was just like this like burning, like anytime I'd see anything about space, it would just like take my breath away and like make me want to like go there.
I'm
Like,
surprised you
hey,
don't
space
live in
camp.
Cape Canaveral.
I know. I did want to do all. I was like, I'm gonna, go to space camp and doing all that. That didn't happen, but until I figured out that like I actually didn't want to pursue the like, this military avenues of getting into astronaut training. I was like, oh, that's not quite and what I wanted to do with my life. But I feel like then I went on this deep dive in through yoga and that kind of avenue of spirituality. I was a yoga teacher. I owned a yoga studio for a long time. And yoga got really interesting for me when I started deepening my study of philosophy and cosmology. And like then the ancient yogis and the yogi masters, they were talking about star people and cosmology, and there's a whole section of yoga philosophy that is talking to the
Huh,
cosmos.
I never
And
knew
then that was like
that.
those two came together. I was like, oh. And over the last 5 or 6 years, I've allowed myself to really uh, focus on, like I didn't realize other people would care to like hear the star tales and stories as much as I did. And then like this whole world of like, oh, there's a lot of people reawakening to their capacity. I feel like our ancestors were like their Netflix or their entertainment was the night sky, right? They didn't
Yeah,
have books, they didn't have and that there was this big role of watching the stars, aligning to the stars. Stars were the tails, out around the fire. And um, I feel like a lot of us are rekindling those skill sets.
absolutely. So, do you still communicate with the light beings that showed up when you were a little girl?
Um, yeah, for sure. In different ways. As I've awakened since like the 2012 and then another round in 2016, especially, like have had communications with Hathors, Venusians, Arcturians, Pleiadians, on and on, like Orion, Sasquatch. It's like I can
Oh,
pretty much, I don't say tune into whoever I want to, but that's true. Like they come through in different ways or different times of the year. Different beings will be more communicative. I
huh,
feel like
tell
in some
me.
ways it's not like a separate thing. Like it's like this merged state of um, interaction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. You hit on a big trigger word for me, Sasquatch. I love
Yeah.
Sasquatch. Tell me
Well, that's
everything.
so, the Orion constellation, I'm going to send you like there's in the Native American tales, like that's the Sasquatch constellation. So as opposed to like the
Oh,
hunter, I'll send you a picture when we're done with this.
that makes sense.
It's like a Sasquatch, and they talk like Sasquatch on the level of uh, drivers of the starships, interdimensional beings. That the furry giant man thing is like one level of their presentation to humanity. That's not
Oh,
like my experience with them, but it's much more. this like source of love. And but I feel like through the Orion constellation, there's a lot of Sasquatch knowledge in
Oh,
this.
wow. That makes sense. Interesting. So have you ever seen one on Earth? Or just the communication, the love communication between the stars in here?
I haven't had a like direct face to face. I've had some like off in the woods movement kind of. I've
Yeah.
had like visitation where they're close by, even like in my backyard and the woods around here. They're around,
Wow.
they're here a lot, but not like a, oh, we're gonna sit down and have tea, or we're gonna have like this
Right.
conversation, or like darting in front of my car in the middle of the night. Not that kind of, but
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, they're in my backyard now. Like I can talk to them from here, and or I can like in the woods and different.
You can sense it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I
So what
think I've
sums
I've
it up for
sensed it
you?
before too. Just one time in the woods, I could just feel that energy. I saw nothing, but it was a different feeling for me, and I just knew intuitively it was Sasquatch. But just that one time. They're neat, they're fascinating. And I love that it's come out that they're interdimensional, because that makes so much sense. Why they can kind of just move in and out without ever really being caught.
Caught. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. It's my like people have to be dialed in onto the wavelength. I don't know. I can't answer to that whole what the Bigfoot hunters are about, because they're on a whole different program,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Um, but that's not, yeah, they could just dissolve into the tree or the nothing. They're not like going to be found if they're not supposed to be.
And it feels
They're,
like they really pick up on your vibe. Like if you're at the right vibration,
they
then
have
they'll
this
come.
quality of like protection, and they work a lot with
Mm,
kids. So whenever I'm doing work with children, be it, earth plane children or souls, children's souls, they're kind of in that mothering.
ooh, yeah. Talk a little bit about that. I didn't know you did that.
Do what?
The working with children's souls.
Well, um, that's a whole nother this is a topic of another. But so I definitely am a grid worker, grid keeper, gatekeeper, and it's not an active role that I'm playing right now. I feel like I've moved on to other roles, but there was a period of the 2016, 2017, 2018, in that time, 2019, where there was a lot of, as some of the old narratives or some of the old goo like releases off the grids of Earth, as the crystalline
Mm,
grid were coming
mm-hmm.
online all the way, and a lot of the timelines and the magnetic grid, like as we're going through planetary ascension, and the grids are coming online in a more dynamic, interdimensional way. Um, yeah, like one aspect of my grid work has been working with like the child souls of like, I don't know how much we want to talk about, groups of children who haven't been treated too well, or like, kids in the cages at the border, kids
Gotcha.
in,
Yep, yep.
container ships, kids, that kind of thing. Like,
Yeah, wow. That's some heavy shit, man.
I live really close to Sandy Hook, just like
Oh, yeah.
school shootings, like anytime so grid workers work with, oftentimes when there's one of those big, you know, massacre of groups of children at a school, like the
Mm-hmm.
human heart grid experiences that.
Yeah,
So grid workers around the planet, a lot of us work on like moving that energy through.
yeah.
So sometimes it's the souls of the children, sometimes it's the parents, sometimes it's a lot of that. The pain story that's on the land, indigenous children,
Yeah, like
that
especially in
whole,
Canada, that whole thing that came up
well, they're
recently
here,
that was
you
uncovered.
know,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. In New
Mm,
England, it's rich with stories of slaughter and
mm,
warfare and all that stuff. So um oftentimes when you're working with like place-based things, they'll like pop off here in my neck of the woods is a lot of last year there was the 400th anniversary of the Mayflower landing. That had a whole indigenous, like impact on the land. And you can go to sites on the land and the pain story is one of the layers that you work with as you're clearing.
So you go ahead and help Gaia assist in removing all of that and sending it to the light, or how does that work?
Well, interesting. That is sort of I want to say outmoded, but that whole thing of like going in and clearing and moving things, I feel like that's like we've graduated from that as grid workers. You know what I mean? Like that is one way that has been done for a long time. But really it's just like holding big columns of light. Sometimes, when you're like going in as a crystal yourself or going in to work with lots of beams of light, as you're doing that, if there are stuck energy or trapped souls or, that's that whole, you're going to feel them go, and that like, I wouldn't call myself a psychopomp necessarily, but I do fill that role often. Wow. You know what that is? Like
no, I don't. This is all fascinating.
Like one small, not even small example, but here I was working with Boston Harbor quite a bit. And so there's a island that's Deer Island. So during the King Philip's War here in Massachusetts, this is in the 1600s, 1670s. There was a lot of the natives, it's a long multi-layered tale, but a lot of the colonial folk took the natives and like interred them on this rock, basically, without food, without shelter, without water, and they like, horrible sufferings in that. So a group of grid workers and I like would travel to that site. But that was many years ago. It's like you can, when you're there, it's a whole, you can perform a ceremony or just like help all those people, the souls and the memories and the pain story on the land get free.
Wow. That's
how do we get on that topic?
You are just, I'm very ADD, so I'm kind of all over the place all the time. Wherever, something shiny gets my attention, I just kind of go there.
Oh, the Sasquatch. That's how we got there.
Yes.
The Sasquatch show up. Like the Sasquatch are like, kind of like the Ewoks on Star Wars or like the mama bear. They're like very, in my experience, they're very fond of children. And they show up when the kids need them as like a snuggly teddy bear, kind of mama bear, cozy energy.
I love that. Love that. Wow, you are just so multifaceted. It's amazing. So when you're doing your clearings, is that where your Andaras come into play? And you use those crystals to assist with that too? Or what do you do with the Andaras?
What do I do with the Andaras? That's a great question.
Aside from looking at the pretty colors all the time, because they're beautiful.
The Andaras are really here right now to assist humanity with our awakening. We don't like that word so much, right? But like awakening and ascension and light body. You're talking about we were talking about the ancient skill sets coming online. Like divination as Andaras could be used as like a scrying tool, if you will, like an oracle, like a walkthrough. When you're talking about, it does dovetail with the Sasquatch. But I first started working with Andaras again in the 2016, 2017 time. My third or fourth piece was this silver. She's at home, or I'd take her out and show her to you now, but is a silver or like clear piece. And part of how I woke with it, so the Andaras are like, speaking of sentient like beings, they communicate light codes. They definitely help me talk to stars directly. They're almost like portals or portholes, if you're looking through like a peephole in a doorway, right? Like sometimes beings' faces like come right up into them and look through. So in this silver piece that I have, this very clear profile, a lot of times those of us that work with Andaras take pictures of them or hold them up to the light or work with them with the sun. and you can see in a photograph what, it captures it in a different way than what you see in person. And I took a
Oh.
picture of this silver Andara and had this very prominent profile of a Sasquatch. And it was like connecting me to this mountain. It's on the Tibet-China border. I can't, so many years ago. I think it was K2. It was something like that, like either Everest or
Wow.
K2. But it connected me, and like it looked like it, like a profile of it. And then it connected me to this knowledge of the whole silver Yeti, the silverback
Yeah.
Yeti Sasquatch in that region.
Wow.
And they came through with this whole bunch of downloads and information. And so Andara's work that way, like sometimes connecting you with different light beings or multidimensional beings. They work in light codes, like when the sun hits them or light hits them, they actually create this holographic field that like moves in all directions around it. Sometimes we see it. So I work with them almost like what you call the shadow of like how the sun projects through them, and then it's
Mm-hmm.
like how they project onto a flat surface, like a white surface or a black
Mm.
surface. So that is like a fire letter or like a code. And they work through time and space because like the angle of the sun works at different times of day, different times of year.
Yeah.
The light codes that come through in December are super different than what happens in May, just because of the angles of everything.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know, I feel like I've been working with them really, I'll say diligently, but that's the word that came through. They're all consuming. Like they've taken over my whole reality in a fun way. Um, and just like getting a larger collection here to work with on the grids. And now I'm a steward, which means I connect other people with them or I sell them online too.
Mm.
But that's a process over several years of like, you just really like listen to the soul calling and what they have to say. They're very, very communicative to me. Or,
Oh,
that, did you see Good Will Hunting? The movie with
yeah.
Matt Damon. You know how he's the math guy, and he's
Yeah.
just Mini Driver's characters asking him like, "How do you know all this stuff?" He's like, "I can just play." Like you can give me Julie, give me a guitar, I can't play it at all. But the Andaras, like as soon as I connected with them, I was like, I can just play. They're like a
Mm.
symphony of like light codes and sound, and we just do
Wow.
toning with them, and I work with them with my own energy field, clients' energy fields, grid work, and then the crystalline part of the grid work is like there's a crystalline communication network that is working on restoring the grids, like we talked about, clearing off some of the goo, the
Mm-hmm.
old programs, and moving us into crystalline existence and clear. So I do take them with me to places, and
Wow.
like what's actually it's interesting, like what is actually happening. It's like we're co-creating and building um, light codes or connecting in a different way, or they're like avenues for if you're at the mountains or by the sea or in the woods, like there's different communications that come
Wow.
through.
Okay, I'm taking my Andara for a walk tomorrow in the woods.
Yeah.
Definitely. Got to see
You
what
have one
happens.
there?
I do. Here let me go grab her.
Okay.
Try not to run my cat over.
Oh yeah, with your wheelie chair. Ooh, nice. Is it like a seafoam green, kind of light green?
Yeah, yeah. I was gifted this several years ago.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, so I really haven't had, I'd call it a her. She's got a lot of bubbles
Yeah,
in
yeah,
her
that's
too.
seafoamy.
Um, haven't had her out to play with lately, so I guess this is my inspiration to do that. Very fun.
And the other, like the Andaras really work with our light body and soul. So it's really the interface of solar light and light energy and star codes too. I find like the Andaras really help, or that's what I use them for, like put them in grids, either into the shape. Like if you're working with Cassiopeia, just as a suggestion,
Yeah.
you could get 4 or 5 Andaras and put them in the shape of that constellation and meditate on
Ah.
that and see what happens. I feel
Oh,
like it helps.
wow.
I do that too. I've certainly put them in the shape of Orion, or I'll get like 3 little Andaras in the Orion belt and the 4 shoulder pieces, and then a really bright. Can I go get? I have an
Yeah. Yeah,
Orion,
yeah, yeah. Do
some
it.
Orion sets.
Oh my gosh, you just totally disappeared. Like you blinked out. That was cool.
Sorry, I know. I disappeared into star side.
I love
So
it.
I
Pop
have
out,
this.
pop in.
Well, this is because you talked about Orion. So I form them here at Inner Space. I form them into teams.
Oh, those are big.
Sell them. Yeah, these are huge. I know, not in my and then I pair them. This is opalite. It's a Merkaba.
Nice.
But that the Andaras come together. This is the same color pattern but smaller.
Mm,
I
pretty.
just gotta put them in front of my face.
Yeah.
Right,
That's
for the 3,
beautiful.
like for like Rigel. But this color, it's hard to see. It's got, if you
Kind
held
of
it up to the light,
milky.
it has an orange. Yeah, it's a milky white.
Oh,
But this is, I use these to connect with Orion Nebula, star formation. In the
wow.
belt of Orion often gets called the hunter, but she's
Hmm.
really like the cosmic mother, the birther of stars. So, the belt,
Yeah.
and then the Orion's like what they call the sword of Orion is really like the womb space. I see it as is the birthplace of
Wow.
stars. That's like one of the richest places in our spiral arm of the galaxy for baby stars to be born.
Wow. You're just a wealth of knowledge.
Thanks.
I love it. So, how do you use the stars to forecast?
I'm not that big into forecasting.
Okay.
Like forecast, like like an astrologer would, you mean?
I guess.
But so I use more the stars as a gatekeeper. I feel like one of my roles is to work with the celestial gateways. And so
Mm,
gatekeeping, like a gate, star codes come in and they're light and they're information. So we have the seasonal, the stars that don't move in relation to each other, like the fixed stars, like Cassiopeia, is always going to be that W shape, right?
yeah.
Orion always has the belt and the
Yeah.
shoulders, and like there's the predictable backdrop of stars and constellations.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the moving, the planets and the sun and the moon. So the sun and the moon make pretty predictable patterns through the solar year.
Mm-hmm.
The planets kind of dance around and cross code. So, now we're in mid-November. Predictable things happen with the sun and the moon in their usual cycles. But then it's like right now, Mars is actually in the Taurus constellation and is moving between right around Orion. So Orion's like here in the sky and Taurus is like above it,
Mm-hmm.
that like what they call the sword or the spire of Orion up over his head points right up to the ears of the bull of Taurus.
Yeah.
So Mars is pretty significant right now in, certain, we just went through a Venus cycle. So the sun just conjuncted Venus October 22nd. And Venus is invisible right now. Like you can't see it in the day or
Hmm.
night sky because it's so close to the sun. And Venus will be visible again, but now as a morning star, right? Next week. Like in my latitude, it's around November
Huh.
28th.
So, what do
So
you
instead of
do with that
forecasting,
information?
what do I do with that information? um, enjoy it in my own field.
Okay.
You're talking like communicate and like share it with other people is one of my callings too, to point that out. And then people are always asking me inevitably like, okay, Venus is whatever. What does that mean to me? Like what that's the ask about the forecasting.
Yeah.
It's like I'm not one to be like telling people what they're going to feel because there's an alignment coming up. I feel like my role is to point out that that alignment is happening, and then for all of us to just be, it's like your awareness is the thing, right?
Yeah.
Like how do you
Yeah.
conduct light codes onto the planet? How do you make the planet um, or assist the planet in returning to a space of love and renewal and this whole magical new earth that a lot of us are
Mm,
have our sights on, right? Like
yeah.
that bifurcation of the ways of struggle and strife and warfare, and that we're like truly moving out of that realm and moving
Hmm.
more into a love-based communal oneness, how we know life the good way that life can be. And
Yeah.
like for all of us, that's like, I think for most people that work with the light or work with goodness or work with energy, it's like that's our calling, right? So how do the stars help us do that? There are certain alignments that really unlock at a deep cellular DNA level these patterns for each of us that help the soul like remember its either true calling or its true capacity and our true skill set. So I feel like part of it is like getting people out of we're mired in our individual strife or conflict or
Yeah.
programs or global or societal or political, like all that stuff. It's like when we all move as humanity up to that logos or that level of communicating with the stars, like all those divisions go away, right? And we're like truly like one globe, one earth. So I feel like the more people spend time out in nature, maybe it's hiking or doing whatever, but that time under the stars at night is truly when we feel that transcendent connection
Yeah.
to life.
Have you ever been like, I've had this happen to me where I've been called outside by the stars
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
I will then see something and it's like, okay, what's going on?
But so that those moments are like the thing, right? Where that's excitement. It's like, yes, like sometimes you're like woken up at 3 whatever in the morning and it's like, get outside. I'm like, it's cold, like get
Yeah.
outside. Okay. You like go out anyway.
Yeah.
And then it's like that that awe and wonder, and it's like return to that childlike capacity of like true magic
Mhm.
afoot, and that like it has that quality, right? Where it's whatever like mundane or whatever cyclic thing that you could be involved in. It's like you get to transcend that.
Love it. Now you have kids. Do they share your enthusiasm for the stars?
Well, um, you have kids.
They're adult
Yeah,
children,
yeah,
so
but
yeah.
so right now I have a 13-year old. My 13-year-old is, it's not cool anymore to like care.
Yeah.
It's like I get a lot of eye rolling about stars
Yeah.
now. Like you can't take it yet. On the way to school, I'm like, we gotta stop. We gotta take a picture of this. We gotta take a picture of the sun. And they're like, there's a rainbow around the sun, or there's a
Yeah,
sundial.
yeah.
Like I'm a little bit more in the eye roll stage with my kids right now. But when my son was like 7 and 8, he was fully in the like, or four, five,
Yeah.
6. But I do also have a 7-year-old daughter about to turn 8, and she's in it a little more with me still, but she likes to, she's got her own things to, fairies and rainbow this and rainbow that.
Oh,
Like
I
she's
love
not really
it.
into my things either, but she'll like frolic with me, and she'll go see moon rises with me, but then she's like done in like 14 seconds and wants to go
Yeah.
home, or like I try to go without them honestly, because like I just want to have my time.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
different, but it's also beautiful when they come along too. But I just feel like I'm going back to, you asked me about like what do you do with that information? Like why does it matter if you can see Venus, and the Venus cycle we're just coming out of and eclipses too. So we
Yeah, I
have
wanted to ask
Venus.
about that. And solar flares too.
Yes, there's a lot. So when Venus goes invisible or conjuncts the sun, it's, there's tales all across the world about that cycle, because Venus is one of the brightest things in the sky. It's the third brightest after the sun and the moon.
Mm.
And so in ancient times, it was almost like this, like, where'd it go? Like, or they think, and then it was rebirthed into the morning sky. Like that itself is like a little mini eclipse, right? And there's all the tales of
Oh.
like Ishtar or Inanna or any of the goddesses that would go into the underworld and then get rebirthed back up. So the cycle of Venus is very important to, throughout annals of history for humanity. And this particular Venus cycle, the sun, Venus, Mercury were all in the Virgo constellation when they came together, and Venus and Mercury and the sun have been very close together doing this little dance around. But it has that big, and it coincided with the eclipse this year. So, eclipses generally you go through, and that like descent into the underworld is where you like, you have a death of the ego, death of the old ways, death of the soul, and you're rebirthed anew. And that's a similar cycle to an eclipse too. So we've had a lot of, in my experience, and like, I work with clients here one-on-one and in groups at Inner Space, and a lot of digging deep through the inner coffers, getting rid of the old stories, the old ways of talking to yourself, the old patterns, habits, a lot of family stuff too. I feel like this pattern has been, clearing.
Yeah. Yeah. And then stuff cycling back up again to be dealt with when you thought you already dealt with it has been big lately. It's like, are you kidding me? This is coming around again.
Yeah. So when you say like, if you asked me about like predictions or looking forward, it's like, it helps. I think it helps all of us to realize, like, it's like you're having one of those internal cleaning cycles or dark night of the soul things. Hi, kitty. You have this, it just helps to realize that other people are going through it too, or it's just like this giant clear house where, because if you feel like that on edge as yourself, I think it, for anyone, it's helpful to look at the big picture of things. So the planets, as opposed to like telling us what's going to happen or projecting what's going to happen, they are these forces though of like gravitational, like the celestial mechanics, like where Mars in Venus and Mercury and all the, like, especially the planets that are close, Jupiter, Saturn, where they sit in relation to the earth and the sun does tug, just like the moon pulls at the waters of the earth.
Yeah.
They're pulling magnetically on the earth, and that's going to affect all of us earthlings too. So there are these like cycles of change and transformation.
And then the solar flares too. How did those factor in? Because that seems to really, like, I don't know. Do you follow the Schumann resonance at all?
Yeah, I mean, I pay attention to, so the Schumann resonance is different than the solar. That's like ionic, the
Oh,
ionosphere
okay.
around the
Okay.
earth, and like how that correlates. But yeah, that's a thing. But the solar flare energy and the coronal mass ejection cycles.
Yeah. Yeah, I can feel those,
Yeah.
definitely. Seems to have tamed down a little bit recently. There was a while there about a month ago where it just seemed like it was blast after
Yeah, it was
blast
like
after
C flare,
blast.
C flare, M flare, M
Yeah.
flare, X flare,
Yeah.
X flare. Yeah. How did that?
Stop.
I've, yeah, did you find it overwhelming?
I
Or
did. And then there's other things where it's like other people are like suffering through it. And I'm like, no big deal. So, it depends. But that one a month ago where it just kept happening, yeah, I was feeling it.
yeah, there's a whole, what happens in our solar system, like the sun and its plasma, solar flares are really plasma gases, or sometimes they call them burps. Like the sun will like have a big belch and
Yeah.
it'll send out this like waft of energy. And sometimes they come here to us earthbound, but it's a 360 degrees around, right? So like even if things aren't landing here on Earth, they might be like coding with Venus, coding with Mars, like all the different planets are
Point.
getting affected just the way Earth is too
Yeah,
by
I
that.
never think of the other planets. I just think about us.
Yeah. So all that solar stuff really does work with, I think, our individual, it affects the magnetosphere of the planet. And that in turn affects your human energy field because you're a microcosm of the earth.
Mm.
And so it gets to you, like, to me, like at a cellular level, like it's like extra, like plasma is ionized gas. So it's like almost like extra electrons flowing your way. And so it gets people like a little tightened up. But it's a different quality than interacting with like star codes or suns, but they're not like our personal sun. They're like further away. So the coding is similar, like it's all plasma coding. It just comes to us
Hmm.
in a slightly different, like it's less personal, if that makes sense. It's less effective in the immediate sphere.
That
But
makes
it's
sense.
it's like talking to other, picking. It's like the sun is almost like our first language, right? We're
Yeah.
so used to like the coding of the sun and its information because that drives all life here on Earth, including our own, right? It's but then maybe you want to get to know French or Spanish, or you're going to learn like a different language. I feel like talking to the different stars is like learning a bunch of different languages.
Ah, yeah, very good.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes
So it's like the
complete
sun is
sense.
like how we get familiar with star coding through our own
Mm-hmm.
star, the sun. And then you can expand that and talk to Rigel or talk to, a different, the stars of Cassiopeia and like constellations speak because they're almost like a neighborhood, if you will, like a bunch of different stars,
Hmm.
but they're geometric for us here. The stars in Orion might not have anything to do with each other. It's just from our place here on Earth. We see them on the celestial dome.
Hmm. Have you ever done a regression, hypnotic regression?
No.
Just be curious where you came from. Love to
What?
hear what maybe you'd find from whatever star system you came from.
I feel like I have memories from a bunch of different, like if I was like I don't, not even regressing, but um I definitely have lineage as a galactic watcher, like
Hmm.
through time and space, like time walking and watching through time and space. So
Ooh.
it's not like any one. Have you worked with the watchers at all?
No, I have never heard of them. I want to know more. Explain.
Which part? So there's a lot of different. I don't know if I can explain it right now at this moment. I don't know if I have human words for it. What's a galactic, like it's record keepers or
Okay.
um watching through time and space, like the watchers bear witness to all that unfolds through the galaxy,
Mm.
like from maybe what we consider the Big Bang through like watching the whole like stars being birthed as children and moving out and like the different tales and different.
Oh,
It's
wow.
like yeah, like a cosmic babysitter, I guess is the best way I can think of it. I guess the best human words I can. Does that make any sense? And
Yeah, I
like different
like it.
lineages, so it's like you can dial into. I mean, I definitely have connection to the Pleiades. I definitely feel home base from like Arcturus, but I don't feel like I like as one. I'm like I don't have like a home base or a home planet
Yeah.
besides this Earth planet. It's like we've all lived lots of different existences in lots of different ways.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, what was your most recent communication with the stars? What kind of information did you pull through or receive?
My most recent is the full moon. I think it was October 9th. So it happened to coincide with a long weekend holiday for my kids from school, and my husband's a professor, so he had some time off. So we went on a little long extended family weekend, and it was, like these multitasking things. Like we were there, at a place like that my kids would enjoy too, and near the ocean, and a walking distance from the house that we rented, the vacation house we rented, was this amazing island, like peninsula that I could walk to. And I was on the full moon. So I went at moonrise, moonset, moonrise, moonset, and moonrise again, like 3 different days. And I knew it was like that October 8th and 9th. And it was opening the window for the eclipse corridor, because
Mm,
that moon, that full moon, the next time it turned full, it was going to be eclipsed. And the solar eclipse was 2 weeks after that. So I was like, oh, I could feel it. So as a gatekeeper, it was like just, spending time with that moon and being with it. And Jupiter was there. And I knew that when the solar eclipse happened on October 25th, the sun and the moon were in Virgo, the constellation Virgo. So I had a lot of that. Virgo to me is like cosmic mother, divine mother, like that energy. So I took a walk to this garden-y place, and it was a retreat center, and I saw the moon rising over the ocean, and there was this
mm,
pyramid with this giant lit up Mother Mary statue, and it was this like a whole transmission, and things happen like when you have those moments, and then it might take you weeks, or it takes me weeks to process and download and figure like what is that about. But then as it
yeah.
went through, I had a lot, as I was unpacking all that, the the Virgo energy, the cosmic mother, and the eight. I have a few articles that I published about it too. Like the information was so large, even when I was going down to like, sometimes I can make a video or just like a blog post, but it was so multi-layered. I was like, I have to chunk this up. Nobody's going to be able to read it. I can't, I'm getting lost thinking about it in my own
Yeah.
head. Like I have to break it apart. So I did the 8 different sharings over a couple weeks with the two
Wow.
eclipses. And it was like the cosmic mother or the divine mother birthing through, and the power of 8. It was the Venus conjunction too, and Venus and Inanna and the star of Ishtar. And there's a cosmic 8 rayed star that is like, the shape of the Merkaba, the star
Mm-hmm.
tetrahedron.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So this is also when a baby's formed, a human baby, has the 2 cells and divides into 4 and then divides into 8. And it's that called the seed of life.
Mm,
And it's like that cosmic mother birthing star babies, really.
wow.
So that's like this fall has been. And I also had a lot of, um, I don't necessarily go down the Mary or Jesus rabbit holes too deep myself, but I was like, I had this cosmic mother and how it ties to like Mother Mary. And then, that like, what if the cosmic mother role, how she's dubbed sometimes as like the virgin birth.
Yeah.
I'm like, what if it's really like she's a light birther, and she was like birthing the son of God. She's a star birther, birthing sun.
Wow.
So that's like, and then I had this moment. I use my Andaras to also as tools for meditation or contemplation. So I was doing my morning time, connection time, call it meditation, call it what you will, Andara play space. And there was this moment with the Mary energy and that the birthing of suns and the sun energy and the eight, that like Merkaba. Oh, then I was contemplating. I was like, did she ascend too? Like in the tales, you hear like Jesus ascended, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, what did Mary? It's like her feast was like they called it like she was Assumption. She had an Assumption of Mary when I went back to look at the references. So
Catholic
it's like
school's coming back.
she took her physical body and ascended in her physical body. So
Wow.
it had this like bing, 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 bing. It's like physical body ascension for me is what got activated the last time.
Mm.
And as soon as I figured that out, it was like, and I was like, oh, the Merkaba, like physical body ascension. I'm like working on physical body ascension. And it was like speaking of descent into the underworld. And I've had this like physical, working with light codes and working with light is fantastic. And being a gatekeeper, it's not sensation free on the human physical vessel. That's a good way to say
I
it, right?
I imagine so. I mean, my
And
gosh.
I had like after I had that realization, I feel like my whole Merkaba and my physical body ascension cycle like kicked in with renewed vigor. So I've had this like whole left-sided thing that started when I was down on the coast as like this warm energy that's like, I've had it from here like all the way down my left side of my body, like had this like, anyway, a bunch of things that were happening that felt like plasma or like lymph stuff and like all this stuff. And it was
Wow.
like happening really intensely. And then that sort of like shut off. Like, how do we know sometimes, like, should we seek medical attention
Yeah,
for these
right?
things? Or are they just like happening in the energy sphere? One of the signs that I rely on for myself is when the symptoms or the stuff shifts really rapidly. And then it's in a whole nother part of your body and it's doing something
Yeah.
else, like the recoding. And I take solace in that personally because of like, you know, is this like a mini stroke or am I having like a, like this heating up?
Yeah.
Is this like a lymph thing? Or it's like my whole left side's on fire and inflamed and like head to toe. And then like it shut off and then turned over onto my right side. So now it's like my right hip, my right knee, my right foot. And I realize that's like when your Merkaba kicks in. So that's like in the cycle of right now. It's like that the upward facing triangle, the pyramid and the downward facing, they like kick in. And so some people call it like, the I don't like the terms divine masculine, divine feminine, but that
Mm.
like cosmic
Yeah.
mother, cosmic father, universal father. It's like, oh, that masculine and feminine, that yin yang. It's
Yeah.
like I feel like I've been completely getting recoded since the eclipse in like
Wow.
really intensely in a physical vessel way. So like
Wow.
you know, that's the cycle.
Wow.
I feel like I've just when you called me or checked in with me to do this, I was like, I don't know if I could do it in early November. I think I'll probably be able to talk again in mid-November. But it's all happening, like you're a householder like I am. It's all happening in the grand flow of like
Yeah.
living a like normal human life too. And like
Yep.
soccer banquets and, school
Yeah. Yeah.
events and like grocery shopping and
Be driving to a photography gig and go, I think I'm forgetting how to drive. Wait a minute. Then all of a sudden it kicks back in. Yeah, it's wild.
it's been a very, in the 2022, when 2022 started, that 222, like I think a lot of us knew it was like a mastery year. A lot of people talk about like the builder codes. It's like you're building with the light body. I guess that goes into answering like what I do with the Andaras too. The Andaras
Mm.
like help us access the building blocks of different aspects of your light body. So this 222 year has been this really big reformatting, recombobulating for a lot of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're in
Uh,
this like culmination cycle of the 2022. It's like, whew, it's been a big one, huh?
So what else do we have to look forward to coming up this year? Is there any big
Yeah.
planetary things happening?
So that was what I just described has been that big Venus cycle. And then
Mm-hmm.
as soon as that, I'm gonna say it like calmed down, but it's like that was happening and integrated. Then when I cast my gaze forward, like what's the next thing that I should be paying attention to for myself? Mars, 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 Mars. So Mars um, entered. So the constellation Taurus is where the Pleiades, the Hyades, Aldebaran in the sky. That between the Pleiades and the Hyades is the ecliptic. The ecliptic is the path that the sun and the moon and the planets make across the sky.
Okay.
And the constellations of the zodiac are the constellations that are along the ecliptic.
Okay.
The ecliptic happens to go right between, or happens to go between the Pleiades and the Hyades. So they act like this gateway, this golden gateway that the sun, the moon, the planets all move through at different times of the year.
Wow.
So Mars entered Taurus and went between the Pleiades and the Hyades in late August, and then marched up. So the constellation of Taurus is shown like a bull and has two horns, and then there's two horn stars at the tip. So Mars is like marching all the way through Taurus, and Taurus is kind of a larger chunk of the sky constellation. And then when it got to the tip of the bull horns, it moved into regressive mode. Like it started from our viewpoint here on Earth, it's been marching back
Mm.
and moving all the way back and is coming back to the Pleiades. And so Mars energy, Mars is going to be its brightest, it's closest to Earth, like December 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th is going to be the culmination of this Mars energy.
Hmm.
Mars is in opposition, whatever the technical term is, but it's at its place where we can see it the best. I don't know if you've
Okay.
noticed, you said you usually do like early morning
Yeah.
times, but Mars
Yeah.
has been this like glimmering jewel, and it does look a little more red orange in the sky,
Mm. Yeah.
and it's been really sparkly, sparkly. So it's rises just a little bit after the sun, and it's up most of the night, and you might catch it if you get up really early. You look at the 3 4s before it sets, and it seems like it's coming through. That's like going to be the next kind of big thing. And then always in December is a very precious gateway to me and to a lot of us. The sun moves into the area of the sky that the center of the galaxy is. So in the
Mm.
Sagittarius constellation, right near Sagittarius A, it's like Sagittarius A is like the place where we can look at the center of the galaxy on our night sky dome, right? So it's not like just one little spot,
Wow.
but that in the December around the solstice time, 18th, 19th, a little bit before right now, is when the sun is at its closest point to the center of the galaxy. And that time is always, for me, it's like a very sacred time where like we're connecting back to that core of the galaxy.
Mm. Wow. You are just a wealth of knowledge.
Thanks so much for chatting with me today. It's fun to
Yeah, I
make a
so
tapestry,
appreciate
a
it. I'm
word
just like, my
tapestry.
brain is swelling up with information. I'm like, okay, I need to go process this.
Me too. It's cool how things come through. It's fun. I love having these conversations because, it's all floating around in my brain. Like whatever comes
Yeah,
through, it's like it's fun to have this word play with you.
it is. And to tie the Andaras into all of it and even Sasquatch into all of it, I'm in heaven.
Oh,
I love it. I love it. Thank
well,
you, my
thanks
dear,
for having this
for coming
platform
on
for us to
today.
talk about these big picture fun.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now, do you have anything coming up that you want to share with folks? I'm gonna post whatever information you want me to below,
Oh,
but what do you got
sure.
going on?
Yeah, so I have an online course platform that I'm always posting new things. I do one-on-one work with people, inner space journeys, or if you wanted to work with any of your star lineage things or like talking with stars or body energy fields, I do that. I do some group journeys where I, host on Zoom group movement things. There's a few of those going on. I can give you the link. And then I have, very excited about, that I've been working at for years, and it's culminating and coming through. I have an online course platform. It's called Inner Space Voyages. So I'll pick a
Nice.
topic, and I have some of this Stargate. Like, I feel like one of my roles really is to like empower people to talk to stars directly. And like, how does one do that? It's a lot to, we covered a little bit in this 1 hour
Yeah.
conversation, but I have a lot of building blocks. So really what you have to work on, or you have to work on anything, but what I've found is that you use the interface of your whole sensory awareness field, right? So I have a bunch of different courses to work on getting to know your own inner space and your energy field. And then I'm launching a rainbow light body course, which is really fun.
Ooh.
That's the thing that's happening right now in the Inner Space Academy. And then I'll be doing more gateway things. I try to keep adding things, keep it fresh over there. So
And then you also sell the Andaras.
I do, yes. My page for that
Nice.
is liveaslight.com.
Nice. Nice. Nice.
Yeah, they told me last summer they wanted their own website. It's like, guys, I just got you all set up on my, you know how it's like.
They're
So I
so
have a whole,
demanding.
no, they're very they're beautiful taskmasters.
Well, I'm going to start communicating with mine because I have been neglectful. Hopefully she'll forgive me.
Yeah. Oh, there's no neglecting or whatever. They go dormant. Not dormant is the right word. Like, they can be quiet on your shelf for months and months on end, or even years on end. And then when it's time, it's almost like, it's like when it's time, you'll hear from them, or you'll have a conversation with someone that reminds you or
Yeah,
whatever. And then it's time. It's like they dial in and like in and out of active roles. So
I
it's
love
the
it. I
perfect
love it.
time.
Thank you
Maybe
so
there's some
much.
Cassiopeia connection for you in the
Yeah, right? Exciting. All right, my dear, I appreciate you coming on today. This was
Thank
so
you
much
so much for
fun.
having me.
We'll have to do it again one day soon.
Sure. That'd be lovely.
All right, my dear. Bye bye.